I'm Gary, and this is Coasting with Culture. I like to combine theme park visits and riding roller coasters with various cultural experiences around the world. After going to the largest amusement park in Argentina, the next couple of days were dedicated to finding some of the final coasters of the South America trip, venturing to various parts of the Buenos Aires province, from just outside the city center to a town off the Atlantic coast and in the city of Luján. After my time at Parque de la Costa, I was on my way to a shopping center just on the outside of the city center of Buenos Aires. While previous shopping center stops had been for indoor coasters at FECs, this was a complex centered around a Walmart. And the location of the hopeful coaster was a carnival going by the name of Super Park. When walking around the carnival grounds, something really stood out about their setup. One of the things I find really fascinating is the way that they use some kind of a clay or a mold or something like that to kind of solidify the wiring instead of using wooden planks or plastic planks or something like that you commonly see with most carnival companies when they intend to move from place to place. This almost seems like they are trying to set this up as if it's a permanent park. But then again, it could just be that they tend to stay in places longer term, as I've seen with a number of carnival companies I've looked up in the South America area. There were several rides commonly found with various carnival companies, but one of their thrill rides really stood out as it appeared to be an older version of an inverting spinning pendulum ride. What I was ultimately hoping to get from this visit to the Super Park Carnival was one of the first traveling Pinfari looping coasters I had ever seen. This one was known as Looping Star. This might actually be my first traveling looping coaster that I've ever ridden. Strike that, I did Olympia looping in Germany, which is probably a far superior ride to this. However, of all the looping Pinfaris I've been on, this was actually not that bad. I don't know what it is about typically painful coasters in South America or Latin America. For some reason, they just typically aren't that bad. Well, the one that was in Quito, that one was a little rough. But, I mean, others, like the SLCs and such, they actually haven't been so bad. Either way, I'm grateful for the credit. With another coaster ridden, it was time to head back to the Airbnb for the night, as the next day would be to a more remote area for another coaster run. Getting to the location for finding more coasters to ride, I went back to the Retiro station to catch a bus with a company called Condor. The ride was a little bit tight in the back row of the upper level with a lower ceiling, but they did provide a package of snacks for the ride, including a nice little treat of small cookies with dulce de leche in the middle. The ride itself was fairly pleasant, although it didn't quite go as I had hoped. Unfortunately, that bus took forever, and it ate up a lot of the time I have available for the stop, so I'm gonna have to fly, so that way I can try to make the return. A quick cab ride from the bus stop brought me to Crazy Park in San Teresita, a family entertainment center with some arcade games and small rides, including their powered Zamperla coaster, Tren Minero. Got the first one, now I gotta check out a couple other places. From there, I grabbed a cab to the neighboring town of Costa del Este for a visit to Le Parque Entretenimientos. This smaller park also offered some smaller rides with arcade games. But they also had a bit of theming with the popular television show, The Simpsons. Throughout the place, there were cutouts of various characters, and their eatery was themed after the Krusty Burger. But even with this neat inclusion of Simpsons characters, there was something missing here. No coaster here. Yeah, a little bit of a bummer. Yeah. So I find myself in a little bit of a tricky situation here because there's one other stop I want to try to get to that's a little bit further south. The problem though is that finding cabs here has been really iffy, and then on top of that, the earlier bus ride took longer than I had anticipated, and so there's not a whole lot of time left over to try and get to this place. So at this point, I'm actually having to walk to get to the bus station. That's about a 40-minute walk from the previous park because I did not see a single cab coming in the area. I've not been able to get Cabify to work. Uber's non-existent here. So we're just going to walk to the bus station. And when I get there, I'm going to see if it might be an option to go for the later bus, because there's one that's a couple hours later. And hopefully I'll be able to find a cab that could take me to this other park and back to the bus terminal. And if not, then it'll just have to remain a mystery. The good news though is that this place was not confirmed credit. It wasn't previously listed on Roller Coaster Database. This was a case of something I'd seen on Google that had a picture of a possible coaster there, and I was going to go investigate it like some of the other places. So if you come down to the coast area here, rent a car. After said 40-ish minute walk, I did find the station. So I solved the problem, got a later bus, so that should give me enough time to get to this other park and back as soon as I can find a cab. I think I'm going to end up needing a little more cash because unfortunately without Uber, that's not an option to use my card, and a lot of cab drivers here don't accept credit cards. So I'm going to have to walk over to a bank to hit the ATM real quick, get some cash. And then after that, try to find a cab driver, get to the park. Getting cash in Argentina had been fairly difficult throughout the trip because of their currency problems from severe inflation. Some ATMs would only allow you to withdraw the equivalent of $5 US in Argentine pesos, while also having an ATM out-of-network fee for the same amount, really making it not worth the trouble. Fortunately, I found the base of operations for the town's taxi service and was able to arrange a ride to be paid by card, leading to a visit to this previously unlisted place called Atlantic Park. It didn't look as fully developed as some of the other parks, but that really didn't matter, as not only were they open, they also had a coaster, this one called Montaña Dragon. I got it! Oh, I'm so happy this actually worked out. Managed to finally find a cab where I could pay electronically, not having to worry about cash, which has been a pain in the ass to get here in Argentina. And so I
was able to get to this park that had the coaster that was previously not listed on RCDB. Another new discovery. Credit!
After successfully getting one more coaster on the coast, I went back to catch my bus at what was a noticeably busier terminal, as many of the last buses for the night were departing. It was a bit chaotic trying to find the right one, but I eventually got on it, meaning I could relax for the late night ride back to Buenos Aires. While it had been a late night, I was still ready to go for one more coaster search in Argentina before my journey to return home in a few days. The plan was to make my way to the town of Luján, where a couple more parks were located, taking the Sarmiento line to Moreno, then continuing with an Uber after that. As we were driving into town, I couldn't help but notice the incredible church straight ahead of us. Since I had plenty of time for the day, I made a stop to explore it. Basilica de Luján is a neo-Gothic style church dedicated to Our Lady of Luján, a patron saint of Argentina and a 16th century icon that originated in Brazil and is now housed here. The basilica itself was completed in the 18th century and is part of an annual pilgrimage by foot from Buenos Aires that takes about 15 hours to walk. The interior of the basilica continues to exhibit incredible architecture while housing grand chandeliers, incredible altars, and beautiful stained glass windows. There was also a very elaborate model that depicts the birth of Jesus Christ. The main altar is also incredibly designed. The church also features a tribute to Manuel, a slave who had been tasked with protecting the figure of Our Lady Luján when it was transported from Brazil to Argentina. As the figure was left in Luján, Manuel was gifted to a rancher for the sake of serving as protection for the figure. When ownership of Manuel had changed after that, the new owners tried to remove him from protecting the figure, but he said, "I belong to Our Lady and no one else." The people of Luján came together to buy his freedom so he could continue to protect the icon all the way to his passing in 1686. After exploring the church, I took a short stroll down the alley and across the street to Parque Luján, a smaller traditional style amusement park with mostly smaller rides, although there were a few for the older riders. So I picked up some ride tokens and went to hop on their larger coaster, Montaña Rusa. Looking at it, you would almost think it might be one of the rare wooden Wild Mouse coasters left in operation, although it is actually a steel coaster. The designer is not known, but it was certainly a unique ride experience.
So this was a pretty wild ride. It rides like those old style wooden mouse coasters that you might find in a couple of places around the world. However, it is built out of steel, so it's not truly an old wooden wild mouse, but it has that same feel. Now there are a couple of things about this ride to keep in mind, one of which is that you have to have 2 people to ride. They will not allow you to ride solo. Fortunately, I lucked out and I had a gentleman who was willing to ride with me, so I got the credit. The other thing too about this coaster that makes it kind of unique, there's a couple of stray dogs that will chase the cars when they get to the lower parts of the track. They never get close enough to touch it, but they just bark at it and they chase after it, and sometimes they'll even start climbing up the lift hill to go after them. It's the weirdest, funniest thing I've ever seen.
As the dogs relaxed in the shade, I checked out the park's dark ride called Tren Fantasma, which may have taken the dark ride concept a bit more literally.
That could have been the ultimate in cheese, but fortunately it was dark the whole time. You just didn't see anything. You just heard some random screams and noises. Still fun to try.
In the shadow of the Basilica was the park's other coaster, UFO Coaster. It appears to have been inspired by the SBF Visa spinner coasters that have popped up at various locations around the world, but with a more unique layout.
At first I thought this might be a larger scale model of the SBF Visa spinners, but then upon looking at it and also taking another look at the roller coaster database, this came from a different manufacturer that started making their own take on these spinning coasters. Might be the same company that made the one that is located at Callaway Park in Canada. Either way, it's a fun ride.
With both coasters at Parque Luján Ridden, I wandered over the bridge crossing Rio Luján. Just to the other side was the other park of Luján called Argenpark. Looking around this park, it seems to have seen better days as several of the buildings and attractions were closed up. There were some rides running while I was there, including their larger coaster, the Super 8. This looks like a larger Pinfari Galaxy-style coaster, and since it was running, I got my ride tokens, but ran into a bit of a problem for getting this credit.
Even more painful than across the river waiting for one person? I've been waiting for 2 more for this one. Yeah.
So I ended up waiting for a while, until a few others showed up to ride, and I was able to score the credit. It was nothing to write home about, but at least I got to ride it. And that would leave one final coaster for my time in Argentina. a powered coaster by the name of Dragon Coaster. This was another ride where the manufacturer wasn't known, but what was more of a question was whether it really counted based on how I count coaster credits or not, because looking at it, it looked like it might just maintain the same speed throughout the ride with no influence from gravity.
So it speeds up when it goes downhill, slows down when it goes uphill to get more momentum. In my book, it counts.
After riding some Luján coasters, I was ready for a chance to do some more exploring before my time to head back home. Thank you for watching this Coasting with Culture video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and click the subscribe button below to see future videos here on YouTube like these ones, which you may enjoy as well. Additional content can be found at coastingwithculture.com, and you can also follow Coasting with Culture on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for announcements, previews, and updates. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, take care and safe travels.